From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome back to From Stuck to Scaled, the show where founders learn to build systems that grow with them. Today we're tackling a common scaling snag, agencies and vendors that create more work than they remove. Our guest, Zaslansky Conner, Revenue Operations Advisor and Fractional COO and founder of ZAZ Business Solutions, has spent 25 years aligning marketing, sales, and finance so great ideas become real results. Lauren knows how to turn outside partners into true extensions of your team. If you're paying retainers but not seeing returns, this one's for you. Our guest, Lauren, helps business owners turn scattered efforts into sustainable growth. Lauren brings corporate rigor and entrepreneurial grit to connect the dots between strategy and execution, especially across marketing, sales, and finance. Lauren's led teams at Disney, MGA Entertainment, Little Tikes, and multiple startups, uncovering hidden profit and systems that scale. She lives in Burbank with her husband, 2 sons, and 2 very energetic dogs. All right, so let's welcome Lauren to the show. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, happy to be here, Julio.
I am very happy to have you on this episode of From Stuck to Scaled. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business.
Great. Yep. I'm Lauren Zaslansky Conner, founder of ZAZ Business Solutions. So I work with leaders of established companies, generally about typically 1 million to 5 million, but I definitely work with smaller. They've either founded, inherited, or been promoted into running the business. My background is I grew up on the East Coast and had an MBA in New York and then moved out to the West Coast. So I live in Burbank, California. I spent my first half, or a little more than half of my career at large companies. So I spent 11 years at Disney in consumer products, variety of roles. And then I got smaller and smaller, always in entrepreneurial groups within the bigger company. One of my favorite roles was overseeing e-commerce and specialty sales for a toy company. And I then moved into startups where I was a chief revenue officer and then a co-founder. So now I take all of those kind of big, small, left and right, and I help businesses find their hidden profit. So I am a revenue operations consultant and fractional COO to primarily consumer products and mission-based businesses, but I work with all sorts of businesses.
Nice. So, and again, I mentioned, I'll ask you questions that just pop into my head. Being that you're in Burbank, is Burbank still as recording centric as it's been historically, or has that evolved?
Yeah, a lot of people here are what they call below the line. So it's a lot of editors and writers. I have some friends who are directors, and occasionally you'll see somebody who you go, wait a second, you're the guy who was the judge in that show. I actually saw a neighbor, and I'm walking my dog, and I said, wait a second, I saw you in, Freakier Friday. So, there's that type of thing. So we're here, people say, oh, the studios. And then the other thing people say is, oh, I flew into Burbank Airport. It's a great airport. So those are the big things Burbank is known for.
There you go.
Okay.
So tell our listeners how you help your clients.
Yeah. So I mentioned I help find their hidden profit. So hidden profit is money, time, or opportunity that's already in their businesses. So what I do, a lot of times business owners are kind of stuck. They've grown to a certain level, or they've taken over, and they often don't know what to do next, right? That sounds silly, but it's this, like, they're dealing with fires on all stages. They're kind of trapped a little bit. So I help come in, and I often, it's sort of de-escalating the stress and then figuring out, let's dig in and find out what is causing the problems, right? Whether it's a clog in the system, or, you're running around, you're not actually solving these problems. So that looks like may look like a couple different things. Sometimes that looks like helping them take their financials and taking their data that comes from a variety of sources, and untangling whatever mess that is, and helping that data tell a story so they can make better decisions. So that's sort of one area that's often a focus. Another area is looking at that data, whether it's their items or services, and helping them figure out where to focus. So in the big companies, we'd say SKU rationalization, but that's cutting down and figuring out, okay, this, you might have 800 items, or you might have 80 items, or 8, but a handful of them are actually really contributing to the bottom line. Some of them may be long-term plays strategically, and other ones are just dragging you down. And people look at revenue and they look at cost of goods, but the cost of those items goes much deeper, right? It goes into, you have 2 items for 1 slot at retail. You spent twice as much time. It goes to the owner that spent the whole night, frantically worrying about the supply chain issues for multiple products, or putting it in, slotting those things in place. So that's sort of another big area. And third big area that I want to dig into today a little bit is the managing of agencies and vendors. A lot of times smaller businesses, they're not going to hire a full accounting team. They're not going to hire a full marketing team or a full sales team. They often outsource that. And they figured, okay, well, I've outsourced marketing, so those people will wrangle themselves. They'll just do what they do, and I'm going to save money. So I'm going to hire, one person to do my search engine optimization, and somebody else to do my Google ads. And then I'm going to go over here and I hire my social media agency person, and I have my sales agency. And what are they? They don't even talk to each other. They don't know anything, right? They don't even know each other. So one of the things I really feel passionate about is all of that data is important, and that data is important for everyone. And once you figure out how it connects, again, you figure out what the story is and how you focus, you find many, many better ways to raise your revenue and keep more of that into profit.
Yeah, it's such a novel concept to have your vendors and agencies actually talk to one another, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do see a lot of that segmentation taking place. And I'll be that traffic cop in between and say, yeah, that doesn't work that way.
Right. And you need somebody in play. And often when I work with clients, that person can be me, right? That person is, let's take that data, let's look at it, right? And I say data a lot, so I'm drinking it. But if you take a look at how there's an interplay of, I paid for this thing, whatever, I use social media and I'm expecting it to drive sales on my website, say, right? But instead it drove views on my YouTube channel, right? I mean, it may do things that you don't think about. And the only way you're going to catch that is by looking kind of across the business. And you, individual business owner, may not catch that. So I believe that, you need to look across, whether that's a dashboard, right? Or a meeting. I love dashboards, right? I love that. But, it's fine if it's written down, but if you don't actually talk about it, it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't get you where you need to go.
Are you leveraging AI at this point to facilitate some of that analysis?
Some of it. I think it depends on the business owner. I approach it delicately, right? So I use AI a lot in my own business. I use AI a lot in different, in analysis a lot. And then starting, when I'm using agentic AI to build things, but I tend to not start there, right? So I start with saying, let's have a conversation and look what we have, right? And over time, you can use AI to build, to really do the analysis, but AI is not going to know, AI is not going to know. And I think about back in my toy days of like, hey, that's interesting. The blue toy sold better, at this retailer, the red one sold this, there may be a reason, there may not be. There may not be a good reason, but even just by having those conversations, you start to notice things. So you want AI to help you get there, but you still want a human to start thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you are, and back in my early days in technology,
Mhm.
the slogan was, "You can't automate what you can't document." And that's exactly what you're
Yes.
talking about. In AI, you have to be able to put pen to paper and write out your process flow, have that
Yeah.
conversation, get all that detail to
Mhm.
then be able to automate it. And the same holds true in the AI space. The AI will accelerate that analysis for you, but you need to know what you're analyzing.
Exactly. And you can tell AI what it is and they'll write it down for you, right? You can dictate it, right? There's ways that you can skip a step or two, but you're completely right. And it doesn't know little things, right? I've used this example of sales went up this week. Well, you need to remember, Halloween was a Friday, not a Thursday.
Right.
Eventually I might catch that, or it was back to school week, or something happened. There was a hurricane, and you there was a hurricane last year on that week, and so sales were down and sales are up this year. So that's actually a bump, but it's not really a business bump. It's just
Right.
happens to be we're back to normal. And so those are the stories that help make the numbers stick out. And then you eventually get to prediction, and eventually you get to actually decision making, right? And once you make decision making, right, that's where I help you start making decisions that you can systematize, so you don't have to make the same decision 19,000 times. You can put those systems in place.
Besides the integration of
Mhm.
all of the agencies, how else do you get your customers to work better with them? Where's the crux of the value um, in bringing in multiple agencies?
Yeah, I think it's having a lot of it's a mindset shift. So we all talk about strategic. And a handful of years ago, I said, I'm no longer going to say strategic. I'm saying thoughtful. So why are we doing what we're doing, right? And it's like, stop, think, okay, what do we do? Everyone's doing that. Okay, why are we doing it, right? So a lot of it is when I'm working with clients is thinking about, before you sign up for a trade show, before you work with a vendor, or before you push yourself into a retailer, why are you doing it? And there's an analysis that has to happen, but that's part of the mindset shift of let's think about, and so I work with them on a lot of that. So it's not just me giving advice. It's like, let's sit down and think about this. Okay, you're going to go to the trade show. It might not pay off for 2 years. This is what it's going to cost you. In order to make the best of it, here's some pre-work, here's some post-work, here's the things we need to do. We need to line up, and we need to line up a process. We need to get named. Like, let's just set this up so it's not just a thing you do in a vacuum. And it's being really thoughtful about the things you do, which also means you do less, right? Because everything
Absolutely.
you are thinking about and being deliberate, which is really hard, right? It's really hard for all of us. I mean, how many times do I do things I don't remember doing them because I wasn't thinking about it? But being deliberate about it, and then having conversations. So a lot of what I do, I'm in there and asking those questions, right? Why are we doing that? They said to do that. Okay, why? And pushing back.
Yeah, and that's something, back to the mindset comment.
Mhm,
I'm still in my first year technically as an independent business owner.
mhm.
I was in the corporate world for a long,
Yeah.
long, long time, and
Mhm,
it's very different, to be an employee in a corporation. And I'm going to stick with your conference example, and going to a conference versus a business leader,
yes.
and either or both going to a conference to learn and hosting a booth at a conference.
Mhm.
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
How do you help other than the being thoughtful about it? How do you help your business leaders
Yeah.
maybe make that transition to do a better job? Because it's a significant investment to go and
Yeah.
have a booth at a conference.
Yeah, so if we're gonna go to the conference, I mean, from a sort of brass tacks, that example, um, so there's something in the spring next year, right? And they said, okay, we want to do this conference. This is an area. So first we had a discussion of, yes, this is an area we want to be in. This is from a go-to-market strategy. This is a market we want to be in. Okay. And in this case with this client, it's airport shops. Okay. So then it's great. Let's do that. That's something we want to do. So we talked for this is let's figure out, we need to get a list of who's going to be there. Right. Then this is where AI comes in. Let's contact those people, right? So I'm helping them develop a CRM, customer relationship marketing strategy, and using and integrating that into their emails that they already have and saying, let's put those names into this, right? And we're in the process of doing that, right? Getting those names, putting that into the list, developing a strategy before the show to say, you can't just spam all of these people. So let's send them a note. I'm going to be at the conference, love to talk, right? Some of this is automated, some of this is individual, but literally I'm getting in their email system and doing some of this for them and then showing how to do it. So a lot of what I do is, I don't want to be there forever, but we teach together. I learn where they need help. And then together I lead that execution, because I know most business owners, advice is whatever. They get so much advice and they need help breaking through. Everything is stressful. Everything is emotional, right? Half the time, most business owners are like, do I quit tomorrow or do I stay the course, right? And so going through and so some of that is really tactical, right? And okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to look through it, and together we're going to go through. And that's the same thing with the financials. That's the same thing with funding, right? So that may mean, we're going to, I have worked really close with the bookkeeper to get the books to help tell the story that then goes to the investor conversation, right? But it's taken a year in this particular client's case. It's taken a year to say, now the books tell the story that we want to tell an investor. So I'm not necessarily the investment expert, but I've gotten us to a place where sales have quadrupled. And we know that because the books tell the right story. And we were able to quadruple the sales because we knew what we were doing and we dropped the things that were dead weight and we focused on the things that were growing, right? So when we started, the question was, I don't know why we're not growing, right? So first we have to figure out why we're not growing, and we have to measure it. And then we have to, then we have to do one thing at a time. So it was a little jumbled, but in general, it's digging in. And I like to dig in and then I go back out, and I dig in and I go back out. My logo is sort of based on the fractal concept of, the more you dig in, it kind of keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
And that idea of, when I look at businesses, I like to zoom in and out very quickly and say, okay, we need to think big picture, but then the little stuff is what gets in the way. And that little stuff could be a person being like, I don't know how to do this and I'm embarrassed to ask, right? Or it could just be the system doesn't do the thing you thought it could do, right? And so there's little tiny things getting in the way, and I help them break through those.
So a recurring theme across, seems that the majority of my podcast episodes has been trust, right? The lack of trust, and where that lack of trust comes from, the implications of that lack of trust. And that ends up creating a lot of stress for that business owner.
Yeah.
So how do you see that manifest in your business, as you help customers, and how do you help them get through building, more trust with it? Part of it is in themselves,
right?
Part of it is with these agencies, their employees. So talk to us a little bit about trust.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting thing. I think some of it is, I like to, it's this balance of, I need people to hire me, right? And so I'm constantly like, I want, I come on the opposite of too strong, right? I'm like, take your time. But I really, I want people to be able to bring me on and be able to explain to their spouse, partner, dog, whatever, that they're not making a mistake. So coming in softly is really my approach. And also listening. So one of the things, and we've both been in corporate, right? The pet peeve of the person who says, "Oh, I'm responsible for getting this big deal, and once that big deal comes through, I don't care what happens to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy that studio, and whatever happens to it's not my problem. I got my bonus, I'm out." Right? I am a consultant. I'm going to worry about telling you the things you know, and then I'm out of here. We've been there, right? Like we've been in that where, oh wow, that guy just told you the thing I've been telling you all along, and he got paid what? So it's just a thing, right? So part of me is I don't want to walk out before you've gone through this and make sure it works. So I'm not coming in and going to promise the world. I'll tell you that I've had great results in both my corporate, and smaller and entrepreneurial clients and businesses, but I can't promise because I don't know your problems, right? So we have to go in there together and we have to listen, right? You and I, when we sat down and talked, I asked you your story. I start most conversations with asking people their story because I feel that their business story matters, right? And the numbers are really only part of that. So in order to gain trust, I have to hear what they're saying, right? Is this business important to you because the money is it? Or is this business important to you because it's the legacy of your father? And if you really don't want to disappoint him. And there's different ways to think about that.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you hate this business with the core of your being, but it was your father-in-law's business, right? Then it's a different approach. And so a lot of that trust comes from just general humanness of being a real person. I am a real person. I'm not coming out as a guru with a, whatever I said, I have a system, but I'm not pretending that like the way I approach things is like, this magical formula, right? I come in, I approach things, right? I ask a lot of questions, right? I look at things with a certain lens, right? But my lens tends to be cross-functional, right? I believe that most problems are not siloed, right? Everything's working well, but there's this one thing that's all messed up. It tends to be goes across, and there's this sort of web,
completely.
right? So what are the things that are getting in the way? And I also don't come in and be like, you're screwing up. I lead with curiosity. I assume often when there's problems and, if an employee isn't doing what they said they're doing, you think they're supposed to do, well, there's many reasons for that. Do they know it? Basic level. Do they know they're supposed to do that? Do they agree that they're supposed to do that? Can they do that? What could be getting in the way of them doing that, right? All of those things. And often you find out that the reason they're not doing what they're supposed to do has nothing to do with them being difficult or lazy or this and that. So that comes to me, a lot of it is language, trying to speak the language that they're using, and being really clear about what I'm saying, but also being really upfront with, if I use words that are not clear or acronyms that you don't know, please ask me. And I model that over and over in every meeting with every agency. How many times, and even if I know it, I know most of the time the client won't, or someone in the room won't. And how many times have I asked a marketing person, could you explain ROAS again? Like I know it, I know what it stands for, but like most of the people in the room don't have the gut about it that you marketing agency guide have. So when you say it like blah, 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 tell me, is that a good or a bad number? Because I hear 4 and I don't know if 4 is what we want. Is 4 good? Is 4 bad? Is 4 better than last time? Because that's not helpful. I need context. So I model that, asking questions, which sometimes people might take as I don't know as much, but I truly believe that by doing that, I'm making people more comfortable, and I keep doing it.
Now, sometimes Yeah, you said a couple things in there. Sometimes there's not a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you may have, like you said, we all see things through a certain lens,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the lens is just so fixed that a vendor or an agency may not be able to adapt. They're so accustomed to dealing with automobile manufacturers that they can't handle riding lawnmower manufacturer, even though they both
Mm-hmm.
have four wheels and move you along. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you help that founder make a decision, or how do you fix that relationship?
So in a case of they have an agency that we need to get rid of, is that you're thinking?
Well, or adjust. Let's just say
Right.
it's an adjustment.
Okay. So sadly, in the past few years, right, I've often been I joke, like the axe man for hire, right? Because I know that I can do that delicately. So I often put myself as the person who's like, okay, we got to rid of this person. I'm going to be doing it. Which was really, really hard for me, right? But I've been in that position a lot over the past few years and a variety of organizations where I'm like, I'm going to do this because I know I've been there, right? I've been, I've been both the person let go. I've also been the person left in the room when other people were let go, right? Whether it's an agency or an employee. And so I think about that a lot. So part of that is going back to what are our goals? So a case with a client where we said, okay, this isn't paying off. It may pay off in the future, right? But right now our focus needs to be over here, right? In this case, okay, so if our focus needs to be at this one retailer, our direct consumer business is not our focus right now, right? And each month we're spending it. Let's say we're spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month in this area. It may pay off in 6 months, but I would rather take that money and put it over here because it's going to pay off sooner. And if it pays off sooner, our profitability is going to be so much better that then we'll be able to focus here. So by having those conversations, we can use the numbers and the story together and make a really valid discussion. Now, sometimes it's the vendor, but often it's okay. This isn't working. And we understand why, and we can go our separate ways in a very nice, mutually. Hey, this isn't working now. This isn't our focus. We appreciate this, but we can't continue to spend the money. That also leads to just boundary setting in business, right? It's for our own businesses too, right? It's putting up, this isn't a right fit for us. And that's also tricky. Do you want to do this now? And if so, what would you need to make it work? I'm always getting better at that.
Now, we started the conversation talking about analyzing data.
Mhm.
Um, where do you see companies fail
Mhm.
when picking, KPIs and things to measure? Because I've been in some situations where it's like, we need to look at these 50 metrics, and it's like 50 metrics don't work.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how do you
Yeah.
address that, and how do you help them with that?
I think it's a lot. You have to start somewhere, right? So you pick a few. And then you talk them through. And I think you stress test them a little bit, right? So anytime you're looking at 50 things, it's not helpful.
Right.
But I like to, you start with again, like a dashboard or whatever it is. Doesn't have to be fancy, right? And you start to see over time, right, which ones are moving the needle and which ones are not. One of the mistakes I see is, I mean, I know people talk about vanity metrics, but I'm going to say a mistake is looking the wrong time horizon, right? So you look too short or too long, but let's just say too short. So you're looking at conversion rate. And if you're looking at conversion rate for sales over a 1 week period, but if it's a high priced item or a service, the conversion rate could be months, it could be years, right? I mean, it could be. And so if you're looking at something really short term, you might kill something before it would actually turn around. And that's where some of that's it's not, it's qualitative sometimes more than quantitative, right? You're saying, okay, I got this many people to visit my site. They did not buy. Well, how do you know that they were never going to buy? I know, we all want people to buy right away, but most purchases, if you think about your own personal, right, put yourself in how you purchase things, right? What's your path? And then I like to then push to try to talk to those people, whether it's a survey, whether, maybe there's some AI there to do some AI surveys, but, what is the purchase cycle for that? I'm thinking of if it's a 2,000, let's say it's a table for your house and the table costs $3,000, right? Do you say, I'm thinking of buying a table. Oh, look, it's a table. I'm going to go buy that table. Probably not, right? You think about a table, you talk with your husband about a table, you ask a bunch of people, right? Like that could take 6 months, right? Or you're talking to your architect. It is a long process. So people might shut that down before you ever get there. And with service providers, it's the same thing, right? I mean, I've talked to bookkeepers that I might want to bring on, and I can't bring them on until after tax season. Well, if I talk to them now, that's still 6 months from now or whatever, right? So if they shut down any marketing to me now, they may never get me. And so people thinking about it, you think about yourself. You always think, well, all these other customers, they should turn things around. I don't make decisions right away, but everyone else somehow makes decisions right away. So that's a mistake I see.
So we're at 32 minutes, probably 30 with the intro and stuff. What have we not covered that we should?
I think maybe the tips. So I probably could tighten that up, right? I have this, which is like the trust, the data, and the internal support, like real tips for making agencies work part of a team. So I can go to those tips. And then I could do the red flags. I don't have to.
Well, let's talk red flags, and
Okay.
then I'll go into the tips.
Okay. Perfect.
And that I think will give us a good timeline.
Okay. Perfect.
How do I phrase the red flag question?
So I have this as like red flags that an agency is not a right fit for you.
Okay. All right. So, Lauren, what red flags do you typically see that are indicators of not a good fit, not a good job being performed? Generally, what are some red flags that our listeners should be, maybe looking at when they're assessing their current agency relationships?
Okay, yeah. So one is when the representatives for the agency, they don't ask about your business, they don't ask about your goals, right? So they're in a vacuum and they don't seem to care. A good agency will want to use what you have already and want to understand more about your business. And remember, your business keeps evolving, so that's not a one-time conversation, right? So, and to think about that really rationally, if somebody is helping you do sales copy for your website, say, it would be good for them to know what's working elsewhere, and they should keep knowing that. So it would be good to keep that conversation going. Another one, I wrote, exploding offers, but things that can't be explained clearly. I mentioned language that feels uncomfortable, right? If I hate that pressure. I hate that pressure so much. If you don't do this now, your whole business is going to die, right? Okay, that's fine, but never great, right? Never a great way to start, but never great to keep going with, because when they do that at the beginning, or if they do that during, it's not helpful. They're not going to be helping to explain things throughout. And the last one I say is feeling talked down to, or getting data that you don't understand kind of week over week. You should be able to ask questions and continue to ask questions and have those questions answered. So this is where definitions and acronyms and all of those things are really important, so you understand what data you're looking at. And it doesn't have to be like a long conversation, right? But you have to feel comfortable. And I often see that where business owners, they don't want to ask, right? Because they don't know the language, and whatever that is, salesperson, marketing person, they don't know the language, they don't ask. Um, and sometimes they're taking advantage of.
So, Lauren, one of the things that you mentioned was being talked down to, and
Mhm.
I've worked really hard throughout my career to have great partner relationships
Mhm.
with all different types of vendors. Because to me, a vendor is someone you beat over the head for 50 cents. A partner is somebody that you sit down and you have, a real conversation around how to fix things.
Mhm.
So how do you build those types of relationships and not just, I'm providing a service, that's the fee, and move on with life?
Yeah, so I like to ask questions, and I like to share results. So it's really constantly asking what the goals are, right? How can I help you? And it goes beyond scope, right? I mean, it's a tricky balance. So if I'm working with a client, I come in, with a certain approach, but I can help them with right? I can help them with anything, right? So often that's my goal, is to help grow their business, and whatever it takes to help grow their business is part of the conversation. Um, and that often means bringing in trusted partners in different areas. It doesn't mean that I need to take a slice out of every single piece or do every single piece, right? It's helping, and having an sorry, it's also helping having an understanding of what their goals are on a constant basis, and making sure that we're really reaching their goal, giving them they have choices. It's not about telling them this is the right way to go. It's here's the options, right? So you might want to continue to self-fund your business. If you choose to get funding, here are some options for you. And trusting them that, like, if they have the information, will make decisions, and I will help them make decisions, but not telling them what they have to do and making it seem like they're stupid if they don't do that. And I know for me, right, when I hire somebody and they tell me I have to do it a certain way, they might be right, but like I don't want to listen. So I come in, it's like let's work together and find your solution together. I also believe that the trust can't just be with the founder,
Right.
right? So I want to say I extend that courtesy to everyone on the team, right? From the shipping department to the, marketing agencies, because I'm a representative of the company. So whoever I'm talking to,
Hmm.
I need to treat with respect, and anyone in the company, I need to treat with respect.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah. And I will say that I have been with companies where I've seen a founder disrespect, in one case, his wife in public or in front of other team members. And I took him aside and had that conversation. Like, I can't be part of that. I believe, we need to set a good example for the younger people on our team. And so really continuing to live that, even when it's hard.
So, Lauren, as you know, no one leaves the show without providing some actionable tips for our
Mhm.
listeners so that they can implement today to positively impact their business. And you've given us some great ones, but let's wrap those up. What can you tell our listeners?
Yeah. So if we're talking about just like right today, I would
Yeah.
say look at data together. Don't think about you got marketing over there and your sales team together. Look at things together. So in your next meeting, bring whoever's in the room, right? Talk about what's happening with your sales, with your expenses, and see what people think. Be afraid, allow your business to be a little vulnerable. Let people observe without judgment, right? No blaming. It's basically saying, okay, we're seeing sales dropped a little bit. Here's what we're seeing. Or our audience seems to be going up. What may have happened? Um, Second thing is modeling curiosity and clarity. Around the team, if somebody is using lingo, sometimes they're covering up for they don't understand.
Yeah.
But just assume, if you're the highest ranking person in the room, half the people in the room don't know what half the people are talking about. So model that over and over. What does every single acronym mean? And it gets annoying, I know, but just assume that people don't know. And then this is a little bit different, but as somebody who's thinking about operations and being on this podcast thinking about scaling, I have plan a vacation that requires you to disconnect and then do what it takes to have your team ready for that. Because if you're thinking of scaling or selling anytime in the future, you need to be able to unplug. And we know, the majority of business owners feel that they can't even take a weekend off or a day off without unplugging. If you can't do that, you will never be able to scale or sell. So start thinking about that now, put it in your calendar and plan for that. Okay, one person has your phone number if the place burns down, but like other than that, you should be able to take a week, go to a spa and have somebody not knocking on the door.
Yeah, I love those, especially that last one. And it's a big one because too many owners don't take the time and it hurts everyone around them.
Yeah. And it's also about, it's also about modeling for your team that it's okay to turn off. And not okay, required.
Lauren, thanks for joining us today and showing our listeners the right way to work with your agencies and vendors. I'll have your contact in the show notes, but how can our listeners find you?
Great. The best way is on LinkedIn, Lauren Zaslansky Conner. That's Zaslansky Conner. And then I also have a special offer that I'm offering podcast listeners. So it's a hidden profit power hour, $95. It's actually a little half an hour setting conversation and then an hour where we're going to dig into the thing that's getting you, one thing that's getting you stuck, because often people need help and they can't get out of the way to figure out what they need help with. So I'm going to helping breaking through that. And that website is ZAZ Business Solutions with ZAZ businesssolutions.com/profit power. So it's zazbusinesssolutions.com/profit power. And I will put that in the show. We'll put that in the show notes for listeners of this podcast.
Sounds like a great opportunity for our listeners. So how are you managing your agency relationships? Lauren's given us some great tips on how to have effective agency relationships and some red flags to look for when assessing success. If this episode helped you turn your vendor chaos into clarity, share it with a founder who's drowning in retainers. Links to Lauren and ZAZ Business Solutions are in the show notes. Subscribe, drop a review, and tell us your one change you'll make this week to get more from your partners. Until next time, build systems and scale smarter. Thanks, Lauren. Take care.
Thank you, Julio. This was a pleasure.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, growth strategies for small and mid-sized businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.